There's a quiet shift happening right now across the UK. Not on the news, not in the headlines, but in the bank accounts of ordinary people, teachers, delivery drivers, admin workers, graduates with not much spare cash, who figured something out. Something small. Something most people dismiss as not worth bothering with. And something that done consistently has the potential to genuinely change your financial life. And it starts with just £50 a month. Now, before you click away, I know what you're thinking. £50 isn't going to make me rich. And you're right. It won't. Not on its own. Not immediately. But that's not the point. Because this isn't about £50. It's about what £50 becomes when you understand how money actually works. When you stop letting it sit still. When you point it in the right direction. And then leave it alone. That's what this video is about. Let's get into it. Here's the problem with how most people in the UK handle their savings. They earn money. Some of it lands in a current account. Life happens. Food, rent, bills, council tax, a weekend away. And whatever's left at the end of the month sits there, doing essentially nothing. Earning a fraction of a percent in interest maybe. Slowly being nibbled away by inflation. This is the default. And the default is quietly expensive. Because here's what inflation actually means for your money. If your savings aren't growing at least as fast as inflation, they're shrinking. In real terms, every year. Without you lifting a finger or making a single bad decision. You don't have to gamble anything. You don't have to make a mistake. You just have to do nothing. And that's enough for your money to lose ground. Right now, in 2026, the cost of living has permanently reset to a higher level than most people grew up with. Rent is higher. Food is higher. Energy bills are higher. And the idea that you can simply save your way to security by stuffing money into a standard savings account, that idea is quietly broken. So what do you do instead? Let's start with the foundation. Because before we talk about passive income, we need to talk about something most people skip, and skipping it is a mistake. The emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of essential expenses, kept in an easy access savings account, not invested, not locked away, just there, accessible, ready. This sounds boring. I know. But here's why it matters. If you don't have an emergency fund and something goes wrong, the car breaks down, you lose a contract, a bill arrives you weren't expecting, you have 2 options. You dip into your investments at potentially the worst possible moment. Or you go into debt. Neither is good. Both set you back further than the original problem. The emergency fund isn't exciting, but it's the thing that keeps everything else intact when life gets unpredictable. And life always gets unpredictable. Get that sorted first. Then we talk about what to do with the rest. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Once your emergency fund is in place, every pound you save after that point has one job: to work harder than you do. To generate returns without you having to trade more of your time for them. That is the definition of passive income. Not a side hustle. Not a second job. Not a course you have to sell. Money that earns more money. Quietly. Continuously. While you sleep, work, or sit in traffic on your commute. And the most accessible way for ordinary people in the UK to build this is investing. Now I want to be careful here, because the word investing carries a lot of baggage. It sounds like something for people in suits, for people with spare tens of thousands lying around, for people who understand things you don't. But that's not the reality in 2026. Not even close. Look at this. The average monthly contribution from first-time investors on some of the UK's most popular investing platforms is under £100. Regular people, starting small, using apps that are genuinely straightforward to use. The barrier to entry has essentially disappeared. What hasn't changed is the need to understand what you're doing before you do it. So let's talk about where that £50 a month actually goes, because this is where most people get confused. And confusion is expensive. The most important wrapper to understand first, and this is non-negotiable, is the Stocks and Shares ISA. An ISA is an individual savings account. You probably already know about cash ISAs, but a Stocks and Shares ISA is different. It lets you invest in the stock market, funds, shares, ETFs, and everything that grows inside it is completely tax-free. No capital gains tax, no dividend tax, no income tax on the returns. Every UK adult gets an ISA allowance of £20,000 per tax year. Most people use nowhere near that. But even if you're putting in £50 or £100 a month, doing it inside a Stocks and Shares ISA means every penny of growth belongs entirely to you. This is genuinely powerful. And it's completely legal, completely available, and massively underused. Most people keep their money in cash savings accounts and accept a few % interest. Meanwhile, the long-term average annual return of a globally diversified stock market index over decades, or equal, has been somewhere between 7% and 10% per year. That difference, held over 20 or 30 years, is not a small gap. It is life-changing. But here's the part where people go wrong. They open an ISA, they put money in, and then they try to pick individual stocks, individual companies. Trying to beat the market, trying to find the next big thing. And most of the time, it doesn't work. Not because they're unintelligent, but because beating the market consistently is genuinely extraordinarily difficult. Professional fund managers, people who do this full-time, with teams of analysts, with decades of experience, the majority of them fail to beat a simple index fund over the long term. This chart explains everything. Active funds versus passive index funds, over 10 years, over 20 years. The pattern is consistent. So what's an index fund? An index fund is simply a fund that tracks an entire market, the global stock market, the S&P 500, the FTSE All World. Instead of trying to pick winners, you own a tiny slice of hundreds or thousands of companies all at once. When the market goes up, you go up. When it dips, you hold steady and keep buying. You're not betting on one company. You're betting on the global economy continuing to exist and grow over time, which historically it has. This is the quiet strategy that most financially literate people in the UK are using right now. Not glamorous, not exciting, genuinely effective. Now let's look at the actual numbers, because this is where things get real. £50 a month. Invested into a low-cost global index fund inside a Stocks and Shares ISA, assuming an average annual return of 7%, which is actually conservative by historical standards. After 10 years, you've put in £6,000. Your pot is worth around £8,600. After 20 years, you've put in £12,000. Your pot is worth around £26,000. After 30 years, you've put in £18,000. Your pot is worth around £60,000. And the numbers get crazy from there. Now, where is that extra money coming from? You only contributed £18,000. So where does the other £42,000 appear from? Compound growth. The eighth wonder of the world, as it's sometimes called. You earn returns on your money. Then you earn returns on those returns. Year after year. It builds on itself. Slowly at first, then faster still. In the early years, compound growth feels like nothing, like you're standing still. But it's working. And by the time you're in years 20, 25, 30, the growth is almost absurd. Most of the total wealth is built in the final third of the journey. This is why starting matters so much. Not how much you start with, when you start. But here's the problem most people hit. Volatility. You invest your £50 in January. By March, the market has dropped 12%. Your pot is down. You look at it. You feel the panic. You wonder if you made a mistake. And some people pull out. And this, right here, is the single most expensive mistake a long-term investor can make. Selling when markets fall locks in your losses. It takes you out of the market precisely when prices are at their lowest, meaning you miss the recovery. And recoveries have, historically, always come. Markets go down, sometimes sharply, sometimes for months. But zoom out to a 20 or 30-year chart and the direction is clear. The long-term trend of global markets has been consistently upward. Individual years are unpredictable. Decades are not. The strategy isn't to time the market, it's time in the market. Set up a direct debit, monthly, into your ISA, into your index fund. And then, this is the hard bit, leave it alone. Don't check it every day. Don't react to headlines. Don't let short-term noise shake a long-term strategy. Most people don't realize that the boring approach, the consistent, unexciting, monthly contribution to a broad index fund, has outperformed nearly every complicated strategy over the long haul. Now, there is one more thing I want to cover, and it's something that can genuinely accelerate everything I've just described. Your pension. I know. We've talked about pensions on this channel before, but the reason we keep coming back to it is simple. It's the most tax-efficient investment vehicle available to ordinary working people in the UK, and it's still being criminally underused. When you contribute to your workplace pension, your employer contributes too. In many cases, for every £1 you put in, your employer adds 50p or even a full £1. That's an immediate 50% to 100% return before any investment growth has even happened. On top of that, the government adds pension tax relief. A basic rate taxpayer gets 20% relief on contributions. So a £100 pension contribution costs you just £80 out of your take-home pay. If your ISA is your medium-term investing vehicle. Building wealth over 10 to 20 years, your pension is the long-term engine. The thing running quietly in the background for decades. Used together, these two vehicles, the stocks and shares, ISA, and the workplace pension, form the foundation of almost every sensible UK wealth building strategy in 2026. And they're both available to you right now, with whatever you can spare. Let me bring this back to the £50. Because the point of this video was never really about £50. It was about the principle behind it. The idea that starting, even small, puts you in a fundamentally different position than waiting. There's a version of you in 10 years who started this month, who set up the ISA, who switched the pension to a sensible fund, who set the direct debit, who then got on with life while compound growth did its quiet, relentless work in the background. And there's a version of you in 10 years who read about it, thought it sounded sensible, and kept meaning to get round to it. Those two people are in very different places financially. Not because of talent, not because of luck, not because one of them earned more, but because of one decision, made now, not later. Now. The passive income that people talk about, the financial breathing room, the quiet confidence of knowing your money's working. It doesn't come from a secret. It doesn't come from a viral tip or a shortcut. It comes from doing simple things correctly, consistently, for a long time. And the first step is smaller than most people think. If you're not sure where to start, have a look at the other videos on this channel. We've covered the best UK investing platforms, how to open a stocks and shares ISA, and how to check whether your pension is actually invested properly. The information is there. The tools are there. The only thing left is the decision. Make it today.